Topic today is the business case for HTML5 video. I'm going to be approaching the question of HTML5, I think, from a unusually non-technical point of view for this conference. I've been sitting in on a bunch of the sessions earlier, and there's definitely been a focus on codecs and versions and JavaScript. This is going to be much more focused on the reasons why HTML5 video makes business sense. My name is Devin Copley. I'm the managing director of our media and entertainment division at Kaltura. I thought I'd just start with a quick introduction to Kaltura for those of you who aren't familiar with our company. Kaltura is the first and the most widely adopted open source video platform. We are a framework for creating applications more than an application for managing video. We're sort of the video portion of the development stack. Headquarters in New York. Our core development is in Tel Aviv. We have about 150 employees now. About half of those are engineers. We are venture-backed most recently by Intel, and our various solutions are available within the media and entertainment sector, as well as enterprise, education, and service providers. We offer our software both as a SaaS product, which is similar to a lot of the other providers. We also will license our entire stack to use on your own software. It's also available as a Amazon or Rackspace image, and is available with an open source or a commercial license. The last bullet that I wanted to put on there that I didn't was that we are leaders in HTML5 video. We were the founders of the HTML5 video.org website a while back. We make the video technology available for Wikipedia and the Internet Archive as part of their efforts to make video available to everyone on the internet. I'm going to focus today on rather than on sort of how HTML5 impacts browsers or how it looks from the point of view of technology, I want to look at the audience, the people who need HTML5. And the fact is that the HTML5 video universe is really characterized by mobile devices, by tablets and smartphones. In short, there's a new breed of online video consumers. It's not the desktop video user of yore. Instead, it's somebody sitting on their sofa with an iPad, or on a train or a bus with a Android phone. It's a different setting. It's a different set of people. It's a different consumption experience, and it requires a different approach. The new breed of consumers are using tablets, smartphones, and over-the-top devices. The growth in smartphones just over the course of the last year and a half has been dramatic. These are sales per quarter, so cumulatively you're talking about hundreds of millions of smartphones. And the tablet sales have gone from essentially zero in Q1 of 2010 to over 10 million in Q3, and obviously with the Kindle Fire joining the fray come Christmas time, we expect explosive growth in this sector. I think these statistics are a little bit misleading even. They understate the importance of tablets because these are worldwide numbers, and in fact the tablet is not really caught on outside of America. Something like 85% of all tablet sales are in the US or North America rather. So you have to look at that 10 million in Q3 as being mostly North America only. The tablet is a genuine phenomenon, and you have to approach it separately. It's a different experience on tablets particularly, but also on smartphones. It's more of a lean-back experience. The consumer expects a higher quality video. They expect a larger frame size. They have a much longer average time watched. You see almost twice as high an average amount of video consumed in a single sitting by tablet consumers versus desktop consumers. And they're, related to that, more likely to be consuming long-form content. In a word, the tablet experience is almost more like the television experience than it is like the desktop experience. It's a different audience, particularly in tablets. This is a very recent study from June 2011 of consumers of news content, comparing tablet users against the general public. And you can see they skew more educated, they skew richer, they skew more employed, and there's a bulge in the 30 to 49 age group. This is specifically for news consumers, but I think you can extrapolate those results across to tablet consumers in general. What this means from a business perspective is that this is a particularly valuable audience that is to be found on these connected devices. And the bottom line, I think, of my presentation here, the thing I think that really makes the business case for HTML5 video is that this new breed of online video consumers, there are a number of ways to access this audience, but they all have their drawbacks. Obviously, mobile apps are a particularly immersive and high quality way to reach out to this audience, but there's an enormous barrier to get people to actually download an app and install it. They also have pretty high development costs, and you have to develop across multiple devices, not just across tablets, but across smartphones and other over-the-top devices and such. All of those all of those consumers of video are able to access HTML5 video with a single click. No download is required, no additional hurdle before they can experience your content. So whether you're dealing with premium content or ad monetized content or simply promotional content, you need to consider HTML5 delivery of video if you want to reach this audience. And we'll talk about how premium content, how content protection works in this scenario later on. But I think the point to take away is that even if you're selling premium long-form content, your customers aren't going to pay $4.99 to see it unless they can see a trailer first. And they're not going to be able to see a trailer first unless you make that available in HTML5 video. Just a few numbers around that point. Over 90% of smartphones and tablets in use today are HTML5 enabled. And just as important, almost 75% are HTML5 video only. That is, you can't play video to them with Flash. Flash is not available, obviously, on the iOS devices. It's also not available, or maybe technically available, but barely usable on a wide variety of Android devices as well. I don't mean any disrespect to the good people at Adobe by saying that. A lot of these devices are simply underpowered to be able to deliver Flash on the device. So if the question is mobile apps or mobile web for the delivery of video, the answer will often be both. This is, again, some recent usage data about how people access content on their tablets. And you see it's actually more common for people to be accessing. Again, this is from the news survey. I had trouble finding more recent data on the full entertainment space. But about twice as many people access mostly through the browser as say they access mostly through apps, and many access both equally. So in short, when you think about your overall content strategy, you have to think about mobile because it's a major and growing portion of your audience. And when you think about mobile, you have to think about HTML5 because without HTML5, you're losing a sizable portion of your audience. So how do you reach this audience with HTML5? Those of you who have been following the HTML5 saga over the last several years are veterans of the codec wars. You are familiar with the bleeding edge of browsers that don't support HTML5 and all the various hoops that are necessary to get the right events to fire and the right functionality to manifest. I can't say those days have gone away, but there are a number of companies that have stepped into the breach to abstract away that complexity for you. That's what Kaltura does. Certainly a number of the other folks in this hall are pursuing similar goals. I think the good news for content owners, for content producers, is that we've come a long way in that effort. and that many of the sort of core functionality required to deliver a satisfying experience to the end user in HTML5 video is available today, and available at relatively low cost in a sort of off-the-shelf sort of manner. So to go to some of the details, I mentioned the problems are the differing platform capabilities and codecs, but with a video platform, excuse me, the codec issues are typically abstracted away, and indeed also you can provide a unified user interface across both Flash and HTML5 experiences. You can have a unified, with Kaltura particularly, you can have a unified JavaScript environment for events, which again, avoiding getting too deep into the technology, means it's much easier to integrate the video experience with other functionality in your page or on your site. And perhaps most importantly, and I think the biggest change maybe from last year, if you guys had been at Streaming Media last year, is that the ad integration on the HTML5 side, certainly with Kaltura, and I can't speak for our competitors, but I think largely with them as well, that gap has been bridged. With Kaltura, you can access not just pre-rolls in HTML5, but mid-rolls and companion ads and overlays. And these are broadly compatible, although I can't say they're working on 100% of every single device. They're broadly accessible across the universe of HTML5 connected devices, and most definitely working on the iPads and the iPhones. So the remaining challenges to HTML5 video, again, to reaching parity between an HTML5 experience and a Flash experience, are largely around DRM, that is to say very high premium content protection, and around third-party integration. And I'll just dive into a little bit of detail around each of those points, around how we've achieved parity and what you can expect from a sort of state-of-the-art HTML5 video experience today. First of all, a unified UI language. That is to say that you can design that experience from the point of view of not just what color the player is and what fonts it uses, but also how it behaves, whether or not the user can skip past video, how the users can scrub, whether volume control is available. That functionality is now available through sort of a write once, run anywhere UI language. Again, Kaltura offers this. There are other companies that do as well. All the typical features that you would expect, and even some that you might not expect. Seek volume overlays, the ad support I mentioned earlier, as well as closed caption support. Kaltura can offer, I don't mean to keep saying Kaltura, but it's possible to offer overlay support in HTML5 for closed captions in multiple languages, in non-Western script. It's broadly available. And finally, true full screen, I would say, is sort of the last barrier to what I would say a baseline quality video experience in HTML5. Currently, only some browsers support a true full screen experience, and certainly there are some sort of edge case issues around overlays and other things that happen while you're in full screen. But for the most part, the gap is closing on that point as well. And at the bottom here is just an example of a player that we did for Disney that is actually, that's a screenshot of the HTML5 version. It's identical to the screenshot of a Flash version. I was going to put two of them on the screen next to each other, but I felt like that was a little bit unnecessary. But the point is that you have the exact same functionality available on both sides. Interactivity, I think this is an area where parity is a little harder to find. The more advanced interactive requirements of a NetBiscuits or a Track TV that enable sort of real-time social engagement in video. That stuff is rather specialized, and it's possible to do it cross-platform, but requires a little more work. And there's no unified way to describe it. It just sort of requires implementing it twice, once on Flash and once on HTML5. Again, I mentioned in Kaltura we have the approach of unifying a single event layer around the Flash and HTML5 engines to simplify that process. And the caveat, of course, is a content protection. We had a panel earlier today that I think some of you were in, that we went into some debate on this topic. I have my own philosophy about this. the facts are, whatever my philosophy, strong DRM on HTML5 is far in the future, if at all. But I think the counter argument or the counterbalance to that is that content protection is not and should not be thought of as either or. There's an entire range of content protection techniques that publishers have access to, and a wide range of them are available on HTML5. Token authentication, encrypted delivery, geo-blocking, encrypted HLS. And furthermore, I think it's very important to keep in mind that any security barriers that you force consumers to jump through by nature reduces the number of consumers who will choose to do it. In a way, it's almost the same as the app problem. You have a sort of a balance between the breadth of your audience and how much control you have over their experience. And in that context, I think you have to think of HTML5 as part of a spectrum of technologies to reach your audience. So finally, the takeaways. I wanted to underline the new breed of online video consumers, driven largely by tablet consumption, smartphone consumption, and over-the-top devices, which also are starting to engage with HTML5 display technology. This audience is most broadly accessed through the use of HTML5 video. Apps are a great option for DRM and for control over the user environment. But even if you are planning to deploy apps for access to your content, I think one can't ignore the need for HTML5 for, at the very least, a promotional component to reach your mobile audience. And finally, don't settle for an inferior HTML5 experience. Just putting a video tag on a page and linking to a WebM file is going to break, and it's not going to work, and it's not going to look good. There are a wide variety of options these days to both enable a more complete consumer experience around HTML5 video without causing an enormous amount of engineering work on the part of your organizations. So with that, that's the end of my brief presentation. I thought it might be a good idea to open up to questions. Oh, come on, somebody's got a question. Well, I also have with me, I'm obviously approaching this from the business side, but I'm going to call out my colleague from Kaltura, Michael Dale, who's our lead programmer. So if there are more technical questions as well, Michael is happy to speak up. Yes?
In terms of making this business, because that was when I talked earlier too, and basically,
Yeah.
And I thought you all made the point that was being made is that there's too much attention being put on the special case of DRM in comparison to the actual overall scope of video being pushed out to all these emerging platforms. So, staying on that, sort of the DRM-free arena, which is 80 or 90% of the content, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
What are are there any? You've got parity. What about any unseen roadblocks in this that you know about the devices coming out? Some of these things coming out. You as a leader, what are the things that we don't see that could be roadblocks to this?
Roadblocks.
Yeah, so when I go back and talk to my
Yeah.
decision maker, and they say, well, what are the things that I should be prepared for?
You know, I think, I don't mean to keep harping on this, but I think the roadblocks for the most part are our job, at Kaltura and at the similar companies here to solve. I think there's nothing inherently about the technologies that make it impossible to meet the business goals. What makes it difficult is the fact that each additional platform has additional quirks. And, the next version of IE is going to come out, and it will have a new rendering engine in it. And how that rendering engine will interact with video is yet to be seen. We will undoubtedly be building out our sort of HTML5 video management code base to abstract away that difficulty. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But I do think the problem is really more on an implementation side than it is anything else. And I think particularly on newer platforms, there's no inherent challenges. It's more a matter of just making sure that the implementations are sort of uniform. Does that get at the question?
It actually makes me focus my question, ask a little bit again. I get constant pushback in my organization. I'm in marketing within a systems integrator to roll our own as much as possible.
Sure.
And it sounds like the cases over here and a couple other places that rolling your own has where it's like roll your own versus give it to the experts, give it to you. And maybe that's what I'm kind of asking. Like,
Sure. Well, if I may just sort of speak more directly about the Kaltura product, I think our philosophy is that it's best to sort of bridge the gap between the two. At Kaltura, our philosophy is to provide you with building blocks that enable the construction of your own solutions. And if I can provide a little more detail around that, I think when it comes to rolling your own from a content perspective, the reason to do that is to create a great user experience, to have control over that user experience. From our perspective at Kaltura, what we want to do is abstract away the technological complexity that gets in the way of implementing that user experience. So that's why we've done things like created a UI description language for the player that is cross-platform, HTML5 and Flash, so that you create an XML file once that defines the look and feel of your player, and then we parse that and implement it so that it runs, so it works the same way on both the HTML5 and the Flash side. I don't claim that we're unique in that, but I think that's the correct approach. I think we take similar strategies around things like transcode management, where we'll provide best practices as to which encode flavors or renderings that make sense for which devices. But we enable you to make those decisions, to dig down and decide, oh, actually, I want to do, 2 megabits a second instead of 1.5, whatever it is. I think, again, I don't claim that Kaltura is unique in enabling that amount of control, but I think our philosophy is to make sure that the content owners have control over the things that matter to the user experience, while we take care of the things that are sort of relevant to making sure it works everywhere. That's not your business. You're in the content business. We're in the technology business, and we see those as being relatively clear. I hope that helps.
No, it does, thanks.
And I'm happy to give you a demo if you want.
I've been talking to some of you guys.
Oh, good.
And it's worth adding the note that it's all open source. And you can
Oh, yes. That is very important. I mean,
roll your own.
yeah, that's right. I mean, we'd love to have you as a customer, but more than that, we'd love to have you as users. Our entire code base is open source. It's available to take and use and see if you like it and compare it to what else is available. Some other questions. I mean, I think the content protection space is something that always keeps coming up. Everybody always likes to kick that one around. I guess I would say that I feel like, coming to this conference year after year and hearing always about the concerns of the entertainment industry, the fact is that there's much broader applications for online video, and those are just starting to take off. And in fact, content protection in that universe is a lot more about being sure that the individual is authorized to see that piece of content, or validating, in the educational context, validating that a given user has viewed a lesson all the way through. And I guess I would say that the cloud of DRM has a lot of different implications in different use cases. Any questions? Yes, Daniel.
So regarding this content protection, if the DRM does come along with HTML5 sometime in the future, assume there is a demand or whatever reason it just come about, and what form you think it will take? The integration or the support from HTML5 to a DRM? Would the say HTML come define another DRM, make it open standard or open source DRM? Or?
Can I defer to Michael on that? You have more visibility into the sort of standards discussions.
What the standard DRM solution will be?
Yeah, well, the DEC, they're trying to standardize the encryption algorithm and leave the key transmission mechanism proprietary. Given HTML5, if this is the future, I mean,
I think we'll see a lot of sort of wrappers per device. Like if you want to be able to sort of control content, you can't really let any browser sort of access it. So you'll have like these a wrapper around you. So maybe you'll write your platform in HTML5, but it'll be wrapped by a native app for that platform that hides all the transmission of the keys and everything. It won't be something that you'll go with Firefox to some page and be able to watch DRM content.
And is the problem there that Firefox is an open source code base, and so you
Or Chrome too.
yeah, Chrome, WebKit, and so basically, sort of unless you create that sort of proprietary kernel, I'm using the word kernel wrong, but a proprietary hunk of code, to use the technical term, you have access to the key transaction. You can pretty much hack in and get whatever you want.
But as Devin's been mentioning bots, it's important to keep note that all this content's already out there being pirated anyway. You just need to add in enough loops that it's more convenient to pay for it than to click 3 times and download it.
Any other questions for everyone? Yes?
In regards to just the business case, a lot of times I hear people asking about analytics
Mm-hmm.
around the video. Do you guys offer anything in compliance with that, detecting how far into the video they get?
Sure. Yeah, I think there's analytics that come from two sources, right? You can get it from the back end or from the browser side. On the back end, it pretty much looks the same to the back end, whether it's an HTML5 or a Flash player. More precisely, if you're doing HTTP progressive download, it looks exactly the same. But I think probably what you're asking about is more on the client side, which is where really granular analytics tend to come from. And then it really becomes a whole separate engineering effort. I mean, there's no two ways about it. You have to develop it twice. We've done that already. We provide, as I mentioned before, this unified JavaScript layer, so that if you wanted to generate or collect your own analytics from both Flash and HTML5, you can trap events from that JavaScript layer and then write that code once. But for our commercial integrations with third parties like Omniture or Google or Nielsen, we actually developed twice a separate plugin, one on the HTML side and one on the Flash side. And we just, through testing, ensure that you get equivalent data back from both of them. So to some degree, we take that on ourselves to abstract away that difference when you're working with third parties. If you're working on it yourself, you have the JavaScript layer to work with. Does that make sense? Yes?
So in the earlier presentation, you talked about connected TV.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought I wanted to add that to this presentation. I had a lot of trouble finding good data on it. My understanding is that a lot of the display layers in upcoming connected TV systems are based on HTML5 CSS in the first place. To what degree they enable various HTML5 video functionality, I'm not certain. Michael, do you know anything about that? It's not common. I think from the back end, a lot of the thoughts are the same. You still have to manage a bunch of different codecs and different sort of screen sizes and such. And I think also from a audience perspective, I think the connected TV audience obviously is more like the tablet audience and less like your desktop audience. And incidentally, we are, from Kaltura's perspective, we are integrating directly with a bunch of those connected TVs and over-the-top devices, although the reality is that it winds up being a different implementation than you would do for HTML5 in a browser on a tablet.
But it's definitely projected to change, right? We're going to see more Apple TV, more Google TV, more all that stuff.
And the Google TV is Chrome-based, right? Anything else? I'm keeping everybody from their caffeine at this point, all right?
Do you see those television integrations tying into your educational focus markets as well? I just think about the authentication issues that arise in education as opposed to consumer market.
Sure. I don't have a lot of access into the. I mean, I run the media group, so I don't have a whole lot of access into education. But I don't think we're seeing a lot of pull from that segment on the connected TVs to date. They've definitely been focused on the tablets. Very good. Well, thanks everybody. I really appreciate your attention, and feel free to chat with me afterwards. I'll be around.